Astrology up on the hill here. It's Sunday morning, March 8th. We're going to do the astrology from March 8th to the 14th. And we're really, today, the first day that we did the daylight savings, so you can see it's a little darker than maybe the last couple of weeks have been going on. But this transect between dark and light is really, really perfect timing for the energies that we're dealing with here. Anytime we're going from Pisces to Aries season, we're dealing with that sense of endings and integration and birth and new beginnings. And this is no different. Lots of stuff going on. So what we've just been through, we just had the lunar eclipse in Virgo last week. Mercury's still retrograde. Mercury's the ruler of that lunation in Virgo. And that'll be retrograde for another 12 days, so the 20th. That'll be the day of the equinox when the sun enters Aries. And we also have, again, Saturn and Neptune freshly in Aries. So that's that societal evolution push to the new birth, right? But before we get there, we have all these personal planets, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Mars, that are moving through Pisces. Venus on Friday just entered Aries. So it is the first of the personal planets to cross over from the integration and endings of Pisces into the birth and new beginnings of Aries. So we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk more about like what Mercury's been doing. So Mercury retrograde in Pisces, it has been like a Roomba, picking up all those pieces and dust and debris left over from the long stay of Neptune in Pisces, which was for 14 years, from 2011 up until recently, and from Saturn in Pisces for 3 years, starting in spring of 23 up until recently. So a lot of debris there to pick up. And so the personal planets are kind of moving through it, but especially Mercury with the retrograde, that's picking up those pieces, really cleaning things up, okay? And what it did yesterday morning, Saturday morning on the 7th, was it does what it does halfway through every Mercury retrograde. It joined the sun in what's called a cazimi, generically, but specifically this is the inferior conjunction. Okay, the inferior conjunction is the conjunction of Mercury retrograde and the sun halfway between a Mercury retrograde phase. And so you think of the sun as almost like enhancing that Roomba effect, almost like taking a Brillo pad to that Roomba and really scrubbing out any of the debris that's caked in, okay? And so it's really amplified that. And we've really been able to get to the bottom of things. So wherever that cazimi, that inferior conjunction of the sun and retrograde Mercury falls in your chart, that's an area we're getting to the bottom of, okay? So some insights, some revelations might have come to us this weekend. And there's still some time left with Mercury retrograde to finish that, but at least it helps us focus. We might just have discovered exactly what we're supposed to be focusing on in terms of the cleanup process, okay? And that's personal to you depending on your chart. Then we have Mercury here later tonight will actually back into a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. And it formed that trine to Jupiter in Cancer earlier, a few weeks ago. It'll form another one later in a couple of weeks, but this is the second of 3 that it's forming. And Jupiter is about to turn direct on Wednesday this week, okay? And that has big repercussions as well. Jupiter is a planet all about forward motion, future, etc. But it's been in Cancer, which is all about the past, and it's been retrograde. Okay, so really, this Mercury trine Jupiter, which again we're kind of in the midst of for the entire month of March, is helping us get to the bottom of what prevents us from our whole expansion. Like, what are our possibilities? And how have we been limited into those possibilities? So it's really helped us dig down deep over the last few weeks and for the next couple of weeks with regards to how we prevent ourselves from being all that we can be. Because the societal evolution is going to be asking us to be all of that we are in this life, okay? And so it's really helped us hone in on that. And when Jupiter turns direct on Wednesday, we're going to start feeling that forward motion. It's going to finish with Cancer, enter Leo this summer, and that's going to be a very different energy. Okay, so what have we discovered about our past that keeps us limited? And how can we move past that? And that's really what this last ditch of healing is happening here with all these planets in Pisces to catch up with what's happening in society. Okay, then we look at Venus and what that's been doing. So like I said, Venus entered Aries on Friday. Prior to that, it made a sextile to Uranus when it was still in Pisces, made a sextile to Uranus in Taurus, which is like an opening, okay? An opening, a new way of opening our hearts to the possibilities of the new. Then it enters Aries. This weekend, it has formed a conjunction to Neptune, and now as we speak, actually pretty much exact this morning, on Sunday morning, it's exactly conjunct Saturn. Okay, so the conjunction in Neptune has a very expansive effect, almost unrealistic in terms of love and money and everything else. And Saturn has a way of bringing maturity and containment to that excitement and to that unendable expanse, or that infinite expanse of potential growth. Okay, so it's a healthy balance in a way. And Venus, I've seen a lot of astrologers talk about Venus. It's in the sign of impulse, so it's like impulsive desires, right? That's Aries, Venus, impulse desires. Okay, but note that the entire time that Venus is in Aries here, it'll be in Aries till March 30th. Mars is in Pisces, and Mars is the ruler of Aries. So that makes Mars the depositor of Venus. So yes, there can be a sense of impulse with our desires, but there's a chance to shoot ourselves in the foot if we don't, allow. Saturn's going to be very helpful because it allows that containment, that maturity, that focus for that energy. When it pops up, the impulse pops up. It's best to just kind of allow that impulse, acknowledge the impulse, and understand that it's just a warm-up. It's just a prime, because the other personal planets are coming into Aries too. And it's not until they move through and make that conjunction to Neptune and that conjunction to Saturn that we're really crossing over to the other side, to that butterfly phase, essentially. We're out of those eclipses, so we're emerging in that butterfly phase from that several months is in that goo in between the caterpillar and the butterfly that I've talked about for the last several months. And with each passage of a personal planet through Aries, so starting with Venus here, it's like our wings are expanding a little bit more, and that sense of moving into the new is coming. Okay, but so let the impulses rise, but let them be tempered. Let Saturn temper those impulses, because again, with Mars as a depositor of Venus in Aries, there's a in some ways we could shoot ourselves in the foot if we're not careful. Okay, especially because Mercury is still retrograde. Now, the last 10 days of March, like the 20th to about the 30th, from the time that Mercury turns direct, and the sun will enter Aries and therefore make those aspects. The sun's exalted in Aries, so it'll make that conjunction to Neptune and Saturn. That would be a better time to allow that impulse to move forward, the last 10 days of Venus and Aries, but better through words, better through verbs, because again, the action, Mars will still be in Pisces. But there's great way to put what we want to act into words at that time. And then we get to April, then the action can kind of kick in. Venus will also form a sextile to Pluto here, Monday, Tuesday time frame, so the 9th, 10th time frame. And again, all the personal planets are going to do the same thing. They're all going to form that sextile to Uranus, and when they're still in Pisces, when it forms it to Taurus, they're all going to enter Aries. They're all going to conjunct Neptune, conjunct Saturn, and then they're all going to form a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so Venus is just starting that train. And so Venus in Aries, sextile Pluto, start this week. It's again taking those desires that are now tempered by Saturn, and it's saying, how are we transforming that for the greater society as it is transforming? So what is our role in that? Okay, so it's a process. It's not overnight. Okay, and then finally at the end of the week, on Friday, Thursday, Friday time frame, this is when Mars in Pisces, which is the last of the personal planets, it's at the back of the caboose, it's going to join the North Node in Pisces, and that's something that Mercury has already done. It's going to do again. In fact, when it turns direct on March 20th, it's going to be that's going to be when it's conjuncted for the last time. So it's going to turn direct in conjunction with the North Node. Okay, so Mars is just playing its role in that. So that's all about aligning our actions with where we're headed. Okay, and so Pisces not only does it have to do with endings and integration, but it does have to do with the possibilities and our dreams and our true purpose. Okay, so we're just orienting our action there. So another reason to temper the impulses of Venus and Aries at this current time. There'll be a time and a place for it coming up. So we'll leave it at that. So lots going on, but just know that we're kind of one leg in one side of the endings and integration, one leg on the side of birth and the newness, and no need to rush the process. Let it unfold. We'll get there when we get there. If you have any questions, let me know. You want to see where these fall in your chart, I do personal readings. We can go over that. Otherwise, you can follow me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, depending on where you're seeing this now, and share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Give to someone that you think could use this information. And other than that, we'll talk to you next week. Take care.